Angela Lansbury spent decades building one of the most respected careers in television history, but in 1989, she walked off the set of her own show and swore she would never work with one man again. For years, the incident was dismissed as rumor, an overreaction, or a misunderstanding. However, a newly uncovered studio memo reveals a far more explosive, personal, and revealing story. By the time Murder, She Wrote entered its 6th season, Lansbury was not only the star of the show, but also its soul. To viewers, she was Jessica Fletcher, the warm, sharp-witted mystery writer who always uncovered the truth. Behind the scenes, she was an executive producer and the final authority on set. Her set ran with military precision. Known for her grace and poise, she was also firm, with little tolerance for ego, unprofessionalism, or anything that disrupted production. She demanded that others arrive prepared, respect the crew, and treat the material seriously. Most guest stars admired her, often speaking publicly about how welcoming she was and how she made them feel part of a real ensemble. But there was an unspoken rule: disrespect Angela Lansbury, and you would not last long in her orbit. That made the 1989 incident all the more shocking. The day had started normally on the Universal lot. The morning call sheet was posted, the crew was in position, and Lansbury arrived on time, ready to shoot. A guest star, a familiar actor from stage and screen, had been cast in a major role that required emotional depth and real chemistry with Jessica Fletcher, but tensions quickly surfaced. The actor reportedly arrived late, argued with the director, and questioned the script's pacing. Crew members recalled that the energy shifted the moment he stepped on set. Angela tried to maintain professionalism, but every performer has a breaking point. And that day, hers was about to be tested in front of the entire cast and crew. The guest actor was no stranger to fame, having starred in acclaimed dramas and Broadway productions. On paper, he was an impressive choice. His role on Murder, She Wrote, was meant to be a season highlight, but it became a cautionary tale. From the start, he challenged the script, insisting Jessica Fletcher's lines were too dominant and needed rebalancing. He requested entire scenes be rewritten, complained that his character lacked a strong arc, criticized the wardrobe department, and mocked a background actor's performance in front of everyone. He interrupted rehearsal multiple times, questioning the director's blocking choices and suggesting alternate camera angles. During a scene that required emotional tension between his character and Jessica Fletcher, the situation reached a breaking point. The actor suddenly broke character and shouted at Lansbury, "She is not giving me anything. How am I supposed to play this if she just stands there like a statue?" The set fell silent. Lansbury simply stared at him, her expression unreadable, before walking off the soundstage without a word. Crew members initially thought she needed a moment to collect herself. Others feared production might shut down entirely. Lansbury had never walked off a set in her career, and this single act crossed a line no one had approached before. It was not just rude, it was deeply personal, and there was no turning back. Universal Television began documenting the meltdown word for word. While most on-set drama in television is smoothed over, buried, or quietly managed, what occurred that day was too explosive to ignore. Universal Television documented the entire incident in an internal memo, which resurfaced decades later. Dated just days after the event, the memo was intended only for studio executives, but a copy eventually reached a television historian, revealing damning details. It described the guest star launching a prolonged, profanity-laced tirade on set, targeting Angela Lansbury and several crew members. His behavior was labeled unprofessional, disruptive, and verbally abusive, with quotes calling Lansbury too old to carry the show and hard to work with, insults directed at the woman who had built the series from the ground up in front of lighting techs, script supervisors, and camera operators. Crew members reported that the mood shifted from uncomfortable to surreal. The actor reportedly threw his script on the floor, refused to continue rehearsing, challenged the director's authority, and even yelled at a costumer, prompting a production assistant to escort him off set. The most striking part of the memo, however, was Lansbury's response. She calmly called her producing partner and made her position clear. Either the actor left or she would. There was no negotiation or dramatic exit, just decisive action. This prompted immediate panic at the studio, with Universal's legal and production teams scrambling to manage the fallout. Meetings were held, union representatives involved, and options explored, including salvaging the episode without the guest star. The memo concluded with a decisive note. Lansbury requested final approval of all guest casting moving forward, a non-negotiable demand. Angela Lansbury had faced immense pressure throughout her career, from Hollywood to Broadway to television, but she had never walked off a set until that day. Her decision to retreat to her dressing room was not about ego, but about respect for the work, the crew, and the standards she had upheld for 6 seasons of murder, she wrote. Studio executives tried to persuade her to stay, but she remained unwavering, demanding the actor's removal or she would leave permanently. The network, studio, and crew all understood the stakes. The show was Angela Lansbury, and without her, there was no series. When the actor refused to apologize and instead accused the production of coddling Lansbury, the studio acted. He was immediately removed from the episode, his scenes rewritten or replaced with body doubles and creative editing. Editors later recalled the difficulty of salvaging the episode, but none questioned it. The production wrapped days later without public mention of the incident, and the actor's name was quietly removed from future casting considerations. From that moment on, no guest star appeared on the show without Lansbury's explicit approval. It was a silent power move, yet everyone behind the scenes understood its significance, and no one dared repeat the mistake. Although the studio kept the incident under wraps, word spread within the industry. Agents, casting directors, and executives began to view the guest star differently, and his reputation shifted from talented professional to problematic. Invitations, roles, and opportunities quickly dried up. Meanwhile, Lansbury returned to set the following week, poised and focused, with full control over her show. Some insiders praised her actions as long overdue, noting that in a male-dominated industry, she had asserted authority without fanfare. Others whispered about it differently, but the message was clear. Angela Lansbury would not be disrespected, and she had the power to enforce it. A few began calling her untouchable, not as a compliment, but as a warning. There was a growing sense that crossing Angela Lansbury, even by accident, could end careers. Still, those on set knew the truth. Angela was not vindictive. She was protective. She cared about the show, the people working on it, and maintaining a safe, professional environment. What had happened in 1989 was not just about a rude actor, it was about preserving everything she had built. The actor at the center of it never addressed the incident publicly. He continued working in smaller roles, mostly in theater and occasional guest spots on lesser-known shows, but his name never returned to a major network production. His time in the spotlight quietly, irreversibly ended. Angela, meanwhile, never mentioned him again. No interviews, no memoirs, no passing comment about difficult moments on set. She moved forward as she always did. Crew members who had been there remembered the silence on the soundstage, the stunned expressions, and the feeling that something unspoken had changed forever. That unspoken shift was perhaps the most powerful part. Angela had always been a master of restraint, both on screen and off. Old school in the best sense, she was gracious, dignified, and fiercely private. Even when asked in interviews about leading a long-running series, she steered conversations toward the positive, never revisiting the 1989 incident publicly. That silence was not avoidance. It was principle. Friends and colleagues say the ordeal affected her more than outsiders realized. It was not the insult itself, but the public nature of it, being dressed down in front of a full crew, many of whom had worked with her for years. To Angela, that kind of disrespect was unforgivable. She believed in protecting the people around her and shielding them from chaos, having seen enough shouting matches, power plays, and toxic egos early in her career. Privately, she reportedly referred to the incident only once to a close friend, describing the guest actor as careless with people's time and work, which she considered the worst kind of behavior. She held no grudge, but she never forgot. In the months following, she made subtle but lasting changes to the way the show ran. Guest actors were vetted more carefully, rehearsal schedules were adjusted to minimize tension, and she became even more involved in casting, often reviewing audition tapes herself. Her leadership style evolved, warm but underlined with a new firmness. Crew members later said anyone curious about her approach should ask someone who was here in Season 6. What made her response remarkable was its lack of spectacle. She did not seek headlines, lawsuits, or public vindication. She simply outlasted the drama and kept the show moving forward. In her private journals, she left words that would later be quoted by someone close to her, revealing the heart of her decision. For years, the events on that soundstage remained shrouded in whispers, half-truths, and careful denials. But long after Angela Lansbury stepped away from the spotlight, one final piece of the story emerged. Not from tabloids or crew members, but from Angela herself. In the final years of her life, a biographer working with her family was given access to selected passages from her personal writings, including a diary entry dated just days after the 1989 incident. The diary entry was short, handwritten and deeply personal, confirming what many had long suspected. "He lost his humanity that day," Angela wrote, "and I lost my desire to pretend otherwise." There was no anger in her words, no bitterness, just quiet resolve. A line had been crossed, and she chose not to carry it with her. Instead, she carried forward what truly mattered: her work, her dignity, and the people who showed up each day with kindness and professionalism. In that same entry, Lansbury wrote something even more revealing. The show must go on, but not at the cost of one's peace. Those close to her say that moment reshaped her outlook. She became more selective about roles, more protective of her time, and more intentional about surrounding herself with people who shared her values. Some believe her refusal to return to certain projects in the early 1990s, especially those involving controversial figures, stemmed directly from that experience. She would never say it aloud, a friend explained, but that man haunted her. Not because he hurt her, but because he reminded her how easily something beautiful can be undone. Meanwhile, the guest actor quietly faded into obscurity. His name stopped appearing in trade papers, his roles became sparse and forgettable, and whatever spotlight he had once enjoyed never returned. Angela Lansbury, by contrast, continued to shine. She filmed nearly 100 more episodes of Murder, She Wrote, received countless honors, and became a symbol of grace under pressure. She never needed to expose anyone. Her silence spoke volumes. That single diary entry brought the full truth to light. The incident was never about one outburst or one difficult actor. It was about Angela Lansbury's quiet refusal to compromise her integrity. She was not merely a performer reading lines. She was a standard bearer. She understood the power of example and used it sparingly but effectively. She never sought vengeance, never aired grievances. She simply made a decision and held the line. That, more than anything, made her enduring. In an era of public feuds and scandal-driven headlines, Lansbury represented steadiness. She did not need to raise her voice to command respect. She had already earned it. That 1989 walk-off did not define her career, but it defined something deeper: her values. She showed that boundaries could be drawn without spectacle, and dignity could be protected without confrontation. When we remember Angela Lansbury, we think of Jessica Fletcher, the clever sleuth who always found the truth, even when others tried to hide it. But perhaps her most powerful mystery was off-screen: how to navigate fame with grace, wield power with humility, and confront adversity with quiet certainty. While the guest actor's name may fade, her example will not. She taught an entire generation, especially women, that aggression need not be met with aggression. Sometimes the boldest move is simply walking away. Real strength, she showed, is knowing what you stand for and never letting anyone shake it.